Okay. Here. Yeah. So far, it says, the audio is not great. I'm hoping that this will. It still looks like there's a little gap sometimes. And I think we've set it up now where these other microphones aren't going to interfere. In an ideal world, you just put one microphone in the class, instead they've got 30, so just have to work around it. If you're looking at the video, fingers crossed, it's coming in better. So I have us on chapter 7 or 2, and technically it says class 2, but it's really we're class, I think, 4 now. So does everybody have those? Okay, excellent. So I'm not going to get into the huge long definitions here. But I am going to give you just a couple little notes. So inventory here is tracked by unit. So inventory is tracked by unit. Generally, the inventory is expensive per unit and not the same uniformly. So let's assume you're a boat manufacturer. It seems like everybody around here has a boat. When we think about boats, what's the basic boat? To the bigger boats. Expensive one. You don't want to put it together. So you go. You don't. Yeah, senior people, but usually you don't buy it. Both. But that does happen. But in general, you want to track it by their features. So you want to specifically identify it. So when you go on a car lot, you know, they may show you 15 of their newest SUVs, but all have different features. So. Specific. Average cost. Weighted average. Takes all costs and divides by units to get a per unit cost. Keep in mind when using perpetual accounting, or inventory, each purchase and sale may change. Should I say each purchase may change the cost. Okay. So for those first two, or specific identification, keep in mind that the cost tracking the units is the only method where the cost flow and the unit flow are the same. With FIFO and LIFO, costs flows may not actual movement of the inventory. So what does that mean? So let's say so taking as the first one. But you can use other types that have the like cost flows don't have to match support the costs. Physical asset of the inventory, and then you have costs. So all these we're talking just flows. So it doesn't necessarily mean the inventory moves in that same way. Specific identification, it does. You're telling me that form's coming, so that form is going to case that, and that's the one. Now, if you don't have perishables, it doesn't matter if your inventory sits, as long as they're the same thing, right? Your iPhone 15 is the same as the one made in January, as the one made in December, right? Now, again, we have to worry about different things in management, sorry, but at least they're the same product. And so for the most part, they don't care which one you're taking, but they still may use FIFO or LIFO to report the inventories. So for FIFO, that means first units in are the first units assumed sold. So you have usually a beginning balance in inventory, and then you'll have some purchases. And then you'll have your ending balance. And if we go with FIFO, we're going to start here and we're going to use them up until we hit how much we've sold. And the last cost, essentially, if we sold all of this, we're going to use our costs from here, and then this last one is going to be the inventory. Okay, with LIFO, it's called last in, first out. And so you're going to start with this inventory here and work your way backwards. Let's just say, for purposes, we get to the beginning inventory. Now, it's easier to do with periodic because you just make the calculations at the end. But keep in mind with perpetual, we have to get multiple calculations. And again, our actual flow of inventory does not have to match our cost. Did I leave that up long enough? So let's do some examples. So we have this example one. And it says the company has the following inventory for the month of January. So it tells you, okay, these are my beginning inventory items. These are what I sold. More what I purchased, and then more what I sold. Okay, so we're assuming here a periodic system. And we're going to determine the cost of goods available for sale. And so cost of goods available for sale equals beginning balance plus purchases. So here we have beginning balance inventory. And that's going to be 5 items times $20. And so that equals 100. And then we have our purchases, 9 times $12. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's 108. And so our cost of goods available for sale equals 208. Okay, so now it says cost of goods sold and the end inventory when we use specific identification. Okay, so this was part 1. And what we want to do is say what items were sold. And we look and say, okay, Z2 and Z5 were sold. And what I want to do now is I want to just try to organize them by batches. And so I'm going to look at the second one and see what the second one is sold. It says Z1 was sold. Z3 was sold. And so I see 1, 2, 3, and I don't see 4 being sold. So I know 4 is going to be left over. All right. So this means for these items, cost of goods sold is equal to 4 times the $20 price, which equals 80. And then I'm going to go to the next one and say, okay, what else was sold? And so I know these items here all came from the second purchase. So we have Z6. All right, let me just move up a little bit. Z7, Z8, Z9, and Z14. So cost of goods sold equals, that's 5 times 20, or excuse me, 12. And that should be 60. And so my cost of goods sold should be 140. Any questions so far? So what does that leave us in inventory? Z4 And then we look at what's purchased here. 6, 7, and 8 were purchased and 9 was purchased. And they were all sold. So we have 10, 11, 12, and 13. That didn't sound good. What I want to do is I want to separate them out by the purchases. So this would be in ending inventory. One times 20. And then 4 times 12. It should be 48. And so ending inventory should be 68. And now what we want to make sure, quick check. Cost of goods available for sale equals 208. My ending inventory, I said, was 68. And so I expect my cost of goods sold to be equal to 140. Okay, and that is specific identification. Any questions on specific identification? Okay, average cost. So since this is periodic, we can take the cost of goods available for sale and divide by the number of units to get a weighted average. So what we do, we know that they're $208, right? Cost of goods available for sale equals 208. We're going to divide by total units. And so it should be 14, right? You got 5 here and 9 here. So 14. So we have 208 divided by 14. Equals 14.86. Now, on your homework, don't round in class. It's okay to do this at 14.86. I'm not saying you're rounding, but just to let you know, if you're doing these, and look, don't round until your very end calculation. Okay, so if this were to come out 5,237,994, keep that all in your calculator in Excel, and then multiply it by the next. Okay. Let me just check and make sure this isn't a student trying to get in. It's not, just family stuff. So we're good. My son is having his wisdom teeth. All 4 of them out. And he's got anxiety and he decided, he said, I'm not going to go with the laughing gas. And he's not being put to sleep. I had all 4 of mine out, but I had laughing gas, so it was fun. But I don't know how he's going to do it.
So we know sales wise, I think we had 5 units left over in any inventory. Yeah, 5. So we sold 9. So our cost of goods sold equals 9 times 14.86. Okay. So we get 133.74. And our ending inventory, 5. So ending inventory balance, 5 times 14.86. Should be like 75.12 or something like that. Okay. And so when we add these up, the total should equal the cost of goods available for sale. And so hopefully this comes out to 208. Minor rounding issues there. So that's what happens if you don't carry it. And I don't like it, but you'll see on the next example that we're doing, that sometimes the questions can be really picky. Exam to make sure that there's enough space so we didn't make roundings, it doesn't show up, but the text doesn't always do a good job of separating those out. Now, keep in mind that if this were perpetual, you would have to, and there were more activity, you would have to calculate it at this point, and then you would have to calculate it after this point when they added more. So it changes that type of calculation. Any questions about example 1? Okay, so we're going to jump to example 2, and we're going to do first in, first out. But this time, we've got a perpetual inventory. And so this is going to be a little more challenging because we're going to have to calculate it at each point. So we take the cost of goods available for sale. We divide it by the number of total units at each sale point. So on 1.7, we had total cost of 87,000. Let me put this in parentheses, 87,930 plus 61,800. So this is my beginning balance, and these are my purchases before 1.7. We divide that by our total number of units, 9,000 plus 6,000. And so what we end up with is 149,730 divided by 15,000. Now, again, you'll make sure you want to do it on your homework to carry this calculation out. I'm only going to go out just a couple digits here, but I get 2 per unit. Okay, so we sold 7,500 times 9.982. And so this is equal to 74,865 cost of goods sold for 1.7. This is also the remaining inventory balance. We have 7,500 units remaining after the 1.7 sale, which is half. So the ending balance is 74,865. Everybody following me okay so far? Excellent. Smatters. Okay. So now that's the new beginning balance in inventory as of 1.8. So now we look and say, okay, we have 7,500 units at 74,865, but we are going to add another purchase on 1/26. And it tells us the amount, so we don't have to use a calculator. It's 86,751. And that was 8,100 units. Okay, so we make out our equation again. We have our cost of goods available for sale. And that equals the 74,865 plus the 86,751. We're going to divide that by the number of units. So we had 7,500 plus 8,100. And so we get 161,616 divided by 15,600. And so now our cost per unit is $10.36. Steven, you're kind of looking at the board like my dog looks at me when I ask him to go get me a beer.
To 75 to 92. And we sold 7,500 of them. Mistaken number. No, that's right. I was
So on January 7th, we sold 7,500 of them. But you can see, and it makes it a little confusing here because we had 15,000. So half we what's left over and half we. It's. So. Because you added these purchases before. So this is not, I haven't done FIFO yet. I'm still sticking with this is, I'm sorry for being confusing. I'm just carrying this out and saying, hey, this is a similar example we had before, but I'm going to show you the difference when it's perpetuals. I apologize. This is like the weighted average.
I was doing it, I was thinking. of it.
Right, so here we're using the moving average inventory method. I didn't get to FIFO yet, so that's a great question, and you kind of had me nervous there for a second, I was like, what am I doing? So this is just an example of what we talked about before. Okay. So then this is what we get per unit, and then we have the sale on 1.31, and so that would be 11,100 units at 10.36. And that should, I had the number down. But it's 114,000. 14,996. 14,006. And that's the cost of goods sold. And then the remaining inventory. With 15,600 minus 11,100. And so that equals 4,500. So we take the 4,500, we multiply it by 10.36. And that should be equal to 46,620. We can also get to that by backing into the number. If you take the 161,616 and you subtract out the 114,996, it should still give you 46,620. Good. Any other questions there? So this should have gone down into the next page and taken us to the example. And so we're going to do perpetual inventory records. And we want to know the ending inventory on a FIFO basis. So we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, we want to know the ending inventory and we've got, our sales over here, and let's just total up our inventory. $3,200 and $8,800 would be 1,000 or 10,200. Another 48 would be 15,000, 22,200, 24,200. Check my math there. Six. I did it in my head, so I'm gonna take your answer. My head's got a lot of stuff going on in it. Anybody else get a different number? $26,000. You are correct. Okay. And our sales in units? $2,400 plus 64. 1,600 plus 5,600 plus 800. So I get 20,800. Now, if this was periodic, I'd just be taking the costs from the first in, first out, but because to figure out how much is gone. So our June 2nd sale sold, excuse me, 2,400. And this cost would be 3.20. June 6th sold 6,400. And so this would be the difference now. So now we have to start thinking, okay, what am I doing? How many purchases do I have remaining? So from my June 1 balance, 3,200 minus 2,400 equals 800 units at 3.2. And then my purchase on June 3rd and so here we had 800 units minus the 6,400. We have so our difference here would be 5,600 units at 3.1. Any questions so far? Then we had a June 9th sale of 4,000 units. So from the June 3rd purchase, we took 8,800 minus 5,600. And so that gives us 3,200 left over. At 3.1. And then we need from the June 7th purchase. We have a sale of 4,000 minus 3,200. And that would equal 800 from the June 7th purchase at 3.3. Good so far? Okay, I'm walking you through this really slow. So if you're going, what is he doing? Why is it going so slow? Because I want you to be able to follow the notes later. All right. And then we have the June 10th sale. And that was 1,600 units. And that'll come from the June 7th purchase. And so we had 4,800 units available. Minus 800. Just to check how much we had available, we had 4,800 minus the 800. And so that equals 4,000 units left over. And so all 1,600 come from June 7th. So we've got 1,600 times 3.3. Keep in mind, this is all cost of goods sold, and we're really trying to get to the ending inventory. But I just want to walk you through and see how each step goes in a perpetual inventory and see how much different it is than what you would normally have in a periodic unit inventory. So then we go to the 18th for the sale. We have the June 18th sale. And that's 5,600. And that comes from 1,600 remaining June. So we have 1,600 times 3.3. And 4,000 from our purchase on June 15th. And that one was at 3.4. And then our last sale takes place on June 25th. The 15th. Because we had 7,200 purchased. Minus what we took, 4,000 before. Gives us 3,200. And so all 800 units. From June 15th. So we have 800 times 3.40. So leftover inventory would be 7,000, or let's call it June 15th first. June 15, we had 7,200. Multiplied by 3.4. Oops. And we had the June 22nd purchase. I didn't get to finish here. So how many do we have left over? 32, 2,400? 3.4 will give us that ending balance. And then June 22nd, we didn't have any taken from that, so that is just 2,000 times 3.5. So I think that's gonna be 7,000, right? $8,160. And so we have total of 15,160. That eight's not supposed to be there. Check my counts. Okay. Oh, because I didn't take from June 15th, this wasn't 4,000, right? This was 3,200. And so this would be 3,200. Sorry. So 3,200 times 3.4. $10,080 plus 7,000, 17,880. Thank you. So it's a lot of work to match these up, and I recommend that if you have it, use Excel. Because it just makes it so much easier to work with. This type of stuff. Don't get me wrong, you'll have to make a whole bunch of corrections here, but usually you can work through it faster and you can get your numbers out much easier. Now, let's just do a quickie. Make some calculations here. So we got 2,400, 5.5. Six. It makes it much easier when you can kind of see this type of presentation in Excel. Okay, this is how many units I have, this is how many I sold. Now, if we were not using a perpetual, if we were just doing a periodic inventory with FIFO, you wouldn't have to worry about each of those pieces and you could say, okay, let's just count 20,800. So you go, okay, 1, 2, and then into this one. And so the short is, okay, what do I got left? That's 24,000. So I know 24,000 minus 20,800. And then I have that 2,000 left over and I just. So that's the quick way. How to. Should get some. Same thing. Perpetual should. Oh. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. Sorry about that. Feedback. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. It's me. All right, any questions on that example for FIFO? Okay, so now we have last in, first out. And so we're gonna look at the same details. And so we had. Is 26,000. Sales are 2,800, good. And so what we're gonna do is we're going to work last in, first out, and we're gonna work our way backwards. So we're gonna end up still. Sorry, that's not supposed to be bold. So working our way backwards, last in, first out would be 3,200 and then a portion of 2,000 of the third. So you have beginning inventory, all 3,200. We're going to multiply that by their cost of 3.2. And then we need from the June 3rd purchase. 5,200 minus 3,200 equals 2,000. We're going to multiply that by 3.1. So we end up with $10,240. And then 2,000 times 3.1, so 6,200. $6,200 plus 10,000. Gives us an ending balance. And that is letter B. Yes.
If it's perpetual. So. For each thing that we do, so. So we buy the first one, we internalize it, put it in, and sell it, we take it from. From the purchase,
It depends on what you're using, right? First in, first out means that it originally comes from the beginning inventory. Right? LIFO would be last in, first out, so we're going to be taking from here, going that direction.
we still do all of the inventory reporting at the end. I guess it's a difference in. Because basically how I did it is. From. I went through and I was under the assumption that. You, you have to sell what you already have.
Right.
So I carried the June 2nd sale with the June 1st purchase, 800 left after the purchase. And then I just kept doing that because I kept thinking you can't sell what you don't have.
Right.
So, and mine is different. So my assumption.
So it's kind of a little bit. This just says kept in units only. So that's essentially they're tracking the units, but your cost is done the periodic way. It's confusing, but that's why it's done. Now some practice questions. So I'll give you about 2 minutes to kind of read over and then we'll talk about the question.
Okay, so what you want to do here is you want to think about the inventory flow. Okay, you have inventory. And you have all of your purchases and everything in here. Where does the inventory flow? The inventory flow after it's in, we have merchandise inventory here. Or finished goods inventory, whatever you prefer. It flows to cost of goods sold, right? It's an expense when it's sold. And then cost of goods sold is reported with. The increase. Okay? So if my inventory is down, my cost of goods sold would be high, right? And my cost of goods expense would be high. So if they're asking about net income, profit. Profit and gross margin are the same thing, right? Sales. Cost of goods sold. Profit or net income. These are all going to be. Yeah. So. Over that 10-year period. FIFO, had it been used, the inventory would have been higher, meaning the cost of goods sold would have been less. Thus, income would have been higher. And so the answer equals A. Little reminder, when costs are going up, FIFO is a higher net income. Practice 2. So this one's kind of a challenge because there's a whole bunch of ways you can go about it. But what I do is kind of start with what do we know? So in this case, what do we know? We know gross profit on 400 units equals 1,600. So we divide that by 400, and that's $4 per unit gross profit. And so if we know sales per unit equals $10. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. 10. Resulting in gross profit 16. Less cost of goods sold per unit
We know this is $4. From the first purchase. Sorry, we don't know this. We don't know what that is. Sorry. And then we know that the gross profit per unit is $4. So our cost of goods sold per unit is equal to $6. Right? My sales price minus my cost gives me my gross profit per unit. So quick look. Is any one of the purchases or beginning balance equal to $6? No. So probably not FIFO or LIFO. And I'm not saying that it's definitely not. I'm saying that at least when you see this case and it looks like, okay, here we know that this one was $4 each. And now we're looking at what was the other one? And so we take 2,800 and we divide by 300. You said 9.3333. Okay, so we know it's somewhere in between. Now the question is it weighted average? And so we just got to multiply it out and find out. What I had in inventory was 500 times the $4 price. And so that's 2,000. Okay, and then we had 300 at 2,800. So that gives you 4,800. Sorry. 2,800 and the total is 4,800. Now you know you can divide that by the number of units. We had 800. So that equals $6 per unit. So in this case, it's weighted average. Again, we can have circumstances where that initial one could be a combination of FIFO. But usually, if I find that those people want the other, I have to just check because I know I have to model if the cost of goods sold of $6 per unit. Or cost of unit $6 per unit, I probably solve the problem. Any questions? So there's 5 minutes left in class. These are for practice and we'll come back in and we'll talk about them. Class. Have a great weekend and I will see you on Tuesday and we'll quickly do these and then we will probably jump to 8, but I may have a couple more things I want to cover in chapter 7. So your group problem normally is started in class. So we haven't finished, so we'll have Tuesday. We actually changed all the dates to kind of, when I have it introduced is on the schedule. The due date would be the following class, just before class. But we need to jump into this one. We'll finish practically. See you on Tuesday. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me anytime. Hi, everybody on the chat. Thanks for participating.